Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. So, can you tell us how you first discovered crop circles?
Well, first of all, I came from Canada to this country quite a long time ago to finish my studies in art. I settled in London, and in 1989 I saw an article in the paper about a forthcoming book on crop circle called Circular Evidence, you've heard of, surely. And I just saw a picture of a crop circle, and I was really, really hit by that. I felt a strong resonance, and so something is really happening here, you know. So I bought the book, and then I joined the CCCS, the Centre for Crop Circle Studies in London in 1991, and would travel from London to Wiltshire whenever I had news. But in those days, it's not like now. There's no computer, you know. So you had to wait 2 or 3 weeks to get news on a little news sheet and so on. So by the time I got there, often I'd drive here, and it had been cut or something like that. So I was missing out a lot. And 1991, there was this amazing formation at Barbary Castle, and I thought, and by the time I heard and I came here, it had been cut. I thought, this is not going to happen to me again. We're moving, and we moved. We sold the house and the business there. My husband had a business. We sold all that, and we moved here. In actual fact, I lived in Arton Barnes then for 3.5 years after coming from London. We rented the house from the family there. And so I was plunged straight into the phenomenon. That's how I came to it.
Great, really good. Can you, when I ask you a question, this is just our style because I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
being filmed, can you answer with a little bit of the question?
Oh, sure, surely.
Yeah, so if
Yeah.
I say, where were you born and you were born in London?
Oh, I see. So there's no, we don't hear you.
No, it's all
Right.
about you.
Okay.
Um, so, can you tell us, to someone who's never seen a crop circle and knows nothing about it, what is a crop circle?
Oh, well, for someone who's never seen a crop circle, I would say that it's a very startling image that's imprinted in the crops. But you have to be very observant to see it, and most people don't see crop circles, although for those of us who work closely with them, we see them everywhere. But even the majority of people in this area have never seen a crop circle. Although they are aware they exist, they don't know what they look like, and they don't actually see them in the field. But to a trained eye, they are visible and they're everywhere in this area.
Can you tell us who you think, let's forget the hoaxing for now, who you think is making these and why?
There are many questions we can ask about crop circle, but who is making them is one that I can't answer, unfortunately. I would say that we can speculate, and there's a lot of speculation, but in actual fact, nobody knows where they come from. To me, who has been studying them for a long, long time, and who has a background in symbols and in the arts, I would say that they come from a very high level of consciousness, a high level of development, a high spiritual understanding. But I can't tell you where they come from, who does that, what kind of shape they have, or I have no idea. No, nobody knows actually. If you hear otherwise, it's speculation. We don't actually know that. Mm.
Let's get to the message. What do you think they're trying to tell us? Because that's a little easier to speculate on.
I think that crop circles are telling us about many, many things, and many, many things that we need to know. We need to refresh our memories about. They're very eloquent. They come in very specific locations. They don't appear just any old places. They appear in very specific areas where there is a remains of ancient knowledge. And when I talk about ancient knowledge, I mean ancient, pre-Roman, at a time that perhaps there's not much record of written traditions, although that could be disputed. But so there is a lot that crop circle are telling us, and to me it's a systematic teaching. It's a systematic way of conveying information or knowledge, in fact, not just information, in every field that we can think of, in any domain, in any kind of tradition. mean, we've collected over 6,000 designs. When we put them in line, and chronologically speaking, when we put them in similar, you know, and what I mean by lines, lines of symbols, you know, similar design, we can actually see a train of thoughts. And I am told by people who, you know, we know about these things. Well, just to give you an example, I recognize many of the things that I have learned when I've studied symbols, for example. And that is a tradition from the West, but very ancient tradition. Now, people from other traditions, like there is a Chinese doctor who comes here who's been trained in traditional Chinese culture, you know, and he's a Tao master. So he knows about energy, and he knows about how to treat the body from a Chinese perspective. He told me that the entire ancient knowledge of the Chinese culture is in crop circles. And when he studied the crop circle, it gives him information about the meridians on the body and how to treat certain organs and all the rest of it. And he can read that because that's his knowledge. Indigenous people who come here recognize their tradition in the crop circles very easily. Recently there was a shaman from the Maya from Guatemala who came here, and he recognized that instantly. And he, in actual fact, he took all our old calendars, took them back to him, with him to Guatemala in order to study with the other shamans. So if you have an understanding of something, you recognize it. But another aspect that is also very interesting is I have been told by a physicist who came here specifically to study the crop circles, because he says it was telling him, giving him information about the concept of time and space, which he felt was new knowledge for him. So it teaches us at every level, and every tradition can recognize them. The problem is, if someone doesn't know very much, then you can't see very much. And the people who say there's nothing in it, to me, actually are telling me that they have very little knowledge, you know, because it is there. It's plain to see if you understand that kind of language, you know.
A lot of the crop circles, they seem to point specifically to ancient sites like Silbury Hill and Avebury Stone Circle, even Stonehenge. What do you think they're trying to tell us by that?
Well, I would say the fact that crop circle come on ancient sites, near the ancient sites, to me is significant, because the white race has been cut from that kind of knowledge. We've forgotten our knowledge. The Chinese haven't forgotten their ancient knowledge. The Amerindians haven't forgotten their ancient knowledge. The Mayans still understand their ancient knowledge, but the white race, it was cut quite brutally by the Romans, for starters, and then after that the Christian church started to cover over and to actually demonize a lot of the symbols and so on, and frighten us. You know? So we know very little about our past. We know very little about our ancestors, about the way they thought and the way their mindset, actually. But their mindset we can see in the way that they build their ancient monuments. Just like we can learn about the ancient Egyptian by studying the pyramids. Because whenever we do something, we always do it with the understanding that we have. And therefore, it actually encapsulates our belief system and our vision. If you enter into someone else's vision, then you begin, for example, if you enter the pyramid, you begin to understand the mentality of those days, you see? So you reconnect with that knowledge. And you know the new mathematics and so on, and you see why they were applying it. It's the same can be said with Silbury Hill and West Kennet Long Barrow and Avebury. Avebury was a very important temple. It wasn't just any old place, you know. It contains a lot of knowledge that. When you enter that, you become familiarized with it, and you begin to understand the mentality, and then you begin to see with that eye, to see that vision that they had. And I think that is one of the purpose of the crop circle, is to reconnect us with our own inheritance. The white race, we weren't always materialistic. We weren't always destructive on the planet. We had a quite different vision in the past, which was not dissimilar to the Egyptian and to the Indians, the ancient Indians, you know, from India. we had a concern about the earth. We had a completely different way of seeing that we have now. And we have this vision because we've lost the contact with our ancestors. We're the only race on the planet that does not revere their ancestors. And that's quite significant. So these crop circles are placed there, whether by intent or by coincidence. I lean on the intent. The effect is that we all gather around these ancient monuments and we all ask questions about these ancient monuments because we want to know. And it's important that we know. Very important.
Do you think this is the first time mankind has seen crop circles?
I, I tended to think that this is a new phenomenon for mankind, and I express that to a group of people from India. I said, you know, it's not, it's so rare for something like that to happen on the planet. This is a staggering event. And I was told that by the Indians that actually it is written in the Vedas. And the Vedas, as you probably know, is the oldest teaching that we have on the planet, which was passed orally for thousands of years and has been in written form for about 1,000, maybe 1,500 years, which relates to very, very ancient times. And therefore, it is interesting that it is mentioned that signs had appeared on the planet, you know. The indigenous people we have contacted, for example, in America, the Hopi have a very, very long memory, and they say that these signs appear on the planet when at the end of an old cycle and just before the beginning of a new one. And they remember 4 such instances. So the symbols that we had in the early days, like in the 90s and early 91, the pictograms and so on, people took some of these pictograms to show them. And what they told us was that they were still using these symbols. And in fact, when you look at that, you've seen those on teepees and on the, you know, on the artifacts. They said they were still using these symbols, which had appeared before the beginning of this cycle that we are now coming at the end of. And that's a 26,000 year cycle. So their ancestral memory goes a very long way. In fact, they remember 4 such cycles, you know? You know how long their memory is. Ours is 0. We have no memories. And therefore, for the sake of the planet, we need to reconnect with our inheritance, our memory, our racial memory. Because the white race is the one that is responsible for the materialistic mindset that is at the moment very, very destructive on the planet. And if we don't change our mindset, we will have there will have very severe repercussion. Everyone knows about this. Even the media talks about the repercussion on the planet now. And this application of a materialistic mindset systematically used to actually, you know, this expression of exploiting the resources is very shocking. And when we apply that with the kind of technology that we have, there's no hope for the planet, actually, if we don't change the way we think as en masse. And that mindset comes from the white race. It is affecting all the other races now. But it wasn't always the mindset of the white race, you see. We've completely went full circle. We're at the opposite end of the spectrum from our ancestors. They had a completely different vision. And therefore, I think to me that it is important, it is of the utmost importance that we reconnect to that ancient way of thinking, which is actually inside us in our DNA. You know, it's inside us. It's been passed down through the ancestral stream, but it has to be brought back to our consciousness. Going back to the ancient temples of our ancestors is a good starting point. You see, it's a good starting point. You should be familiar with us. We like going there. It has a resonance, hasn't it? And we need to reconnect with that. Plus all the information that is coming in these designed all around this ancient monument is effectively reconnecting us with the ancient knowledge, to be honest.
actually have one comment before we go on.
Yeah.
Just be careful about touching your chest because the
Oh, I
light is
see.
right there.
Sorry about this.
It's okay.
It's a reflex.
So,
It's in front of the camera reflex.
that's okay. It means
I'm just saying.
Is it making noise?
Yeah, every time you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So maybe instead of actually touching, we can just.
I won't do it again.
Okay, thanks.
Can you do you think that crop circles changed your life in any way?
I think crop circles change everyone's life. Everyone who deals with crop circle, their life has been changed. I don't know anyone who hasn't had that experience. Sometimes very profoundly, sometimes it's totally disastrous. It depends how we receive that energy. Because that's another aspect of crop circles. It's not just an image. We have thousands of images that we look at that maybe make an impression, but a crop circle has a profound effect. And not just because of the imagery, but because it's extremely energetic. I mean, that can be measured. It emits a very, very powerful energy. And an energy has what should I say, a characteristic that it activates. We all know that. We put our foot on the pedal and the car goes faster. We plug a kettle in an electric plug and it starts to boil the water. So it creates energy, you see. And it's the same with us. Once we start to interact with crop circle, it is very energizing. But what people forget is that it will activate whatever we bring to it. So if we bring deceit, it will activate that. It will make us more deceitful. If we bring ego, it will make us more egoistic. If we bring a thirst for knowledge, it will give us knowledge. Whatever we bring to it and we plug into, it will activate. People forget that. They don't know that. And that is quite dangerous in a way, because we have to know it has destroyed many lives in the crop circles, and we have to know what we plug into it. That is very important.
Can you tell us about a particular experience you might have had that really emphasizes what you've just said? For instance, orbs of light, or perhaps seeing something that just couldn't be explained?
Crop circles are very hard to explain, whether we see things or not. Well, we see them in the field. That's already startling, actually, you know. You can suddenly find a massive crop circle after torrential rain overnight, you know. And it's massive. For example, the one in 2001 at Milk Hill, which had 704 circles. 407 circles, mind you, 407 circles, which appeared overnight in the pouring rain. It is often the case. So that is startling. In any case, even on the physical aspect, it's not explainable. How do you explain that? How do you explain that it affects the plants? How do you explain it changes composition of the soil? You know, I mean, that can make someone be absolutely gobsmacked, let alone the design and the beauty and the orbs of light and all the rest of it. I mean, crop circles has got to be the most outrageous thing on the planet. It's completely out of this world. It's completely unbelievable. That's why nobody believes in it. You know, people can't believe in it because it's beyond the concept of what the world is about. It shows us that the world is not what we think, because it doesn't fit into any of the concept of the world that we have currently. It doesn't fit that. So it's totally bewildering, and it's magical, it's mysterious, it's beyond belief. And any belief is threatened by crop circle because it's beyond the belief. Do you see what I mean? If you arrive with a belief, it limits you. And crop circles don't have limitations. So it will threaten your belief, and that's why people put blocks. They don't want to have their belief threatened. It's beyond belief. It's powerfully transformative. You know, You have either to accept and open up and try and find out and learn from it, or you feel threatened, you close down, and you become almost unwell from facing something you can't understand, and you close down. And that explains a lot of the reaction of the world towards this phenomenon. They are unable to look at it because it threatens their beliefs. Then you have to question, what is the value of a belief, therefore? You know, where is it taking us? Is it opening our horizon, or is it closing our horizon? Crop circles show a lot of light, put a lot of light on all sorts of questions.
Let's talk about a less pleasant topic now, the hoaxes. Do you think that the hoaxes could accomplish some of these magnificent works of art?
I think many people, in order to protect their belief system, assume that it's man-made. And in fact, I had an interesting conversation with a farmer recently when I went to ask permission to take a group, and he said, you know, everything can be explained by man. There's nothing above man. And I said to him, well, yes, but we have had an analysis done of the plants in the crop circles, you know. And for many years, we've helped the studies in there, collecting samples and sending wheat and soil to be analyzed in very reputable laboratories, one of which is a laboratory that all the farmers use. And they trust that laboratory. If they send their wheat there in their soil, whatever the laboratory gives them, they believe 100% that it is the truth. And I told him that the soil was no longer the same thing. It had been very, very strongly changed. And the wheat had been, again, transformed. It is not the same thing. You know, the energy that hits it creates some changes in the wheat, which is perfectly easy to detect under the microscope and so on. And he looked at me blankly. And he could not hear what I was telling him. And he kept saying, nothing is beyond the possibility of man. And I'm saying, but how can they change the composition of the soil? How, that will last for years and years. How can they change composition of the wheat? And he goes, man, only man can, you know. He just could not hear what I was telling him. And yet that's the laboratory he trusts with his life, if you see what I mean, you know. So it's no man can do that. Not one man can do that. I would say that the vast majority of the analysis that were done, and many, many thousands of plants have been analyzed, hundreds of formations all over the world, not just England, demonstrate, and it's always the same impact on the plant, demonstrate that some forces were used that cannot be manipulated by man. I was talking to one of our speaker, which we had at the weekend at our conference, and he has worked, he's a professor of physics at university, well, he's retired now, and he has worked with plasma, studying plasma, you know, in the Arctic, and actually entering that energy field. And it's absolutely amazing, you know, his knowledge is amazing. And I was telling him that what has been found with the analysis of the plant is that there is the involvement of plasma. Now, there isn't nothing that man has done that could allow him to use these forces that are beyond the stratosphere to come down and selectively create a very, very complex shape in wheat, leaving traces of its involvement in the plant and in the soil. That is way beyond us, you know, and we don't know where it's coming from. We don't know what can use this thing. It was very interesting to talk with him. He had a very interesting approach, and he said he will try to give us information on this. We can film the plasma. These balls of light is plasma that is filmed there. So plasma is used, and that comes from beyond the stratosphere, you know. There's not one man who can do that. Well, that's one aspect. That's on the physical aspect. On the aspect of the symbols, that is, you know, we see shapes. In fact, they are symbols. I recognize ancient knowledge because that's what I studied for many, many years, and I was always inclined in that way. Some people, like my Chinese friend, he recognizes Chinese medicine very precisely, very precisely. The American Indians recognize their knowledge How can one person have all these knowledge, you know? Especially those who claim to do this. They have no knowledge. They don't know how to work. You would need to be, well, you couldn't do it. Because the ones that were man-made, which we know are man-made, take sometimes several days to do, depending on their size. When they work at night, they bring a crane and they put spotlights. Everyone knows that they're doing that. We can see them. It takes a long time. When the experiment was done, when we filmed them doing the Mitsubishi car, and they were filmed from, they were doing it in Eastfield, and people were filming them from Tan Hill. You could hear the wheat being crushed. That's in daytime. You could hear it. It's only a little, not a professional camera like this, not sound system, just an ordinary, kind of little thing from a video camera. You could hear the wheat being crushed. You could hear them talk quite clearly. Can you imagine the noise it would make at night? There's lots of watchers here. There's not people watching, you know. Farmers would know if something's going on their farm. They're not stupid. There's not that much daylight here. It takes time to do something in the physical. You can't just, I know some people think you do it in computer, press a button, cut and paste in the field, but that's just cuckoo land, isn't it? It's not that simple. It's a way out for people who cling to like my farmer, who would just not hear the evidence, although it's something that should have talked to him. He should have recognized. As soon as you put crop circles, all that goes out the window, and all they can see is a threat to their way of thinking, their mechanistic way of thinking. They can't see beyond that. That's what I see. It's very clear. There's nothing in the hoaxing theory. It's a diversion to calm people down. It's nothing with reality.
Can you talk to us about Silbury? You mentioned you were one of the few people who got access before it was filled in.
Silbury Hill is a very important monument. I went to a megalithomania conference in Glastonbury recently, and one man had done a study of many of the alignments in the British Isles, and indeed all the way to Brittany, and he found that a vast majority of these alignments were pointing to Silbury, were aligned to Silbury Hill. And I'm talking about a huge amount of these alignments. And there are, after all, thousands and thousands, I think there are 40,000 of these alignments left in England, stone monuments. They align with Silbury Hill. There's something very, very important there. It is an ancient pyramid. It's not just a mound. It's not an earth mound. It's a pyramid. And it was built almost like a battery, to create an electricity, to create a kind of force field. It's built in water. It's got its feet on water. It's a swamp. It's a step pyramid. It has 6 levels, and the outside was dressed stone. And at some point, it was covered with earth. I mean, I think at some point, all the ancient monuments were covered with earth. But the fact that the pyramid was white, it's dressed stone, it's hard chalk stone, it's calcaire, roche calcaire. I don't know how to say that in English, but it's actually like chalk but very compressed and white. You can see some houses are built like that. And it shines, it reflects the sun. And therefore, that's why it's called sil. That means brilliant, it means light. As sol, soleil, sun. And therefore it must have been a very shiny, very beautiful, white, 6-level circular pyramid. There are many pyramids that are circular, more and more found in South America and Mexico and so on. It's not a mound. I think it acted as a kind of energy generator. The way it was built is very much like an energy generator. And that was its purpose, to regenerate the area, to generate fertility, well-being for nature. It created a good force which helped the cultures. This was a time when they were really keen to start the wheat and so on, and it was all part of the ancient belief system, which was really based on how to preserve life, how to encourage life, how to tame life, how to help nature. We have the opposite view now, So it's an important monument, very important. Doesn't surprise me that crop circle cluster around it. I think in the ancient time it must have been one of the most important places, really. It was known, if you read the esoteric writings, particularly in France, there's more in France than here, and because I'm bilingual, and my language is French, I get a lot of that, literature. It tells that the ancient days, the ancient tradition is that the seat of the knowledge for the white race was here in England, in the White Isles. And the white monuments were known all over the ancient world as a place of high learning, as the place of Merlin, the old Magi. You know, the Magi were people with vast knowledge, as high as we have, but not quite so materialistic, more spiritual knowledge, you know, which they applied in their technology. It's high technology, Silbury. I spoke to the engineer when I was inside there, and he told me that as an engineer, he would never believe that something that is built entirely of natural material in a swamp, in water, would survive like that, would be feasible. And not only that, but if it hadn't been pierced through the architectural, archaeological investigation, if it hadn't had tunnels, you know, because there was a vertical tunnel and horizontal tunnels dug, that it would not have moved an iota. It never moved. It's a technology that, as an engineer, he could not understand. Well, that's pretty impressive. See, crop circle make us return to this knowledge. That's what I like, because we investigate the crop circle, and suddenly all that becomes visible to us. We look at it with interest, and we are rediscovering an ancient application of a very high knowledge that is beneficial for the planet. In other words, they were extremely green, and we need to go there. It's a wake-up call to go that way, and it's giving us the knowledge to do so. I think it's fantastic. It should be on every newspaper. It should be shouted. It should be taken into, you know, taken seriously.
What do you think about, I want to talk about how they have changed over the years, or dare I say evolved, and how this season has been?
Yeah, I think crop circles indeed have evolved. They are in progress, and it started simple. It attracted us, even though, I mean, we say now, we look back and we think, oh, in the 70s and 80s it was pretty simple, but actually they were always bewildering. They were always amazing. They were always beyond belief, and people were absolutely amazed. In fact, the first book was entirely written about simple circles. And we were, it was amazing. Gradually, as the interest got going, it evolved at our speed, at our capacity to absorb and to understand. There is an interaction. It's not mechanical. It's not something that happens naturally with the wind or anything like that. It's purposefully placed here, using forces, huge forces, natural forces, such as plasma, for example. You know, that's not normal. It's not normal. Therefore, to me, it is a teaching. And the ancient cultures, like the American Indians, for example, they tell us that these signs come here to give us the knowledge for the next cycle, to prepare us to enter into the next cycle. The next cycle isn't going to be the same as the one that we're finishing now. And by the way, if people don't understand what I mean by that, even the Western civilization of the past understood that as the Earth, the solar system actually, travels in the galaxy, it's subject to different influences, and it takes 26,000 years to do a full circle, and that during that 26,000 years, it goes, they called it the Great Year. And that great year had 4 seasons. So one season was spring, and then summer, it flourished, civilization flourished, then autumn, and then winter. We're coming out of winter now, and it's tough. We're coming out of winter, and soon we'll be in spring, and it will have a completely different energy. And that's just the way it goes. It goes like this now with our season. Why should it not go when it travels around? You know, it's subject to different energy, to different influences. And we respond to that. Just like the earth responds when it's spring is different than when it's summer and when it's autumn and then when it's winter. It's the same on a greater scale. We're coming to the end of a long cycle, 26,000 years. And that's going to finish, and to everyone who knows about 2012. Even the Greek knew about it. The Indians know about it. The Chinese know about it. And then that long cycle will finish and a new spring will begin. And I personally am looking forward to that. And we'll have a completely different energy. We need a different knowledge. We can't carry on with the kind of mechanistic knowledge in that era. It's a different thing that's coming. The ancient knowledge, it gives us the tools for that. They give us the understanding and the knowledge to apply it in the coming time now. I can see it. Many people can see it. Many people who still are connected to the ancestral way, they can see that. It's just a mechanistic mindset that doesn't want to change its way of thinking, that's all. But they'll have to, because it'll be a different thing. You can't behave in the same way in the new cycle. We'll have to adjust.
How's the light level going?
It's last question would be great.
Okay. Does anyone want to?
I
Because
can
you've
live with
answered
it,
so
yeah.
many questions before I even asked them. Anyone have a question? No.
Is that all you have?
No, I have more.
Go for it.
So it sounds like you're saying that crop circles are priming us for this 2012 transformative cycle, the end of the processional cycle. Would you agree?
I'm not the one to have said that crop circles are priming us for the new cycle that is coming. That was said to us by indigenous races who have a much longer memory, racial memory, than we do. But I have come to understand what it means, and I can see that that is what is happening, actually. Certainly, if I observe what's happened to me personally and what's happening to a lot of people, is that it's changing the way we see the world. Once you start to see what is happening, just seeing what is happening, you realize that it doesn't fit into the mindset. Therefore, it's real, it doesn't fit into the mindset. Something wrong, there's something wrong there. The mindset's got to be wrong, you see? And therefore we need to adjust our mindset in response to the circumstances. And that's what I see. It's changed my mindset. Although I was slightly inclined to be more holistic than most people, more connected to the ancient ways. But it's changed my mindset. It's changed a lot of people's mindset. And if you really try to understand what is being said in these shapes, in these designs, it cannot but change the way you see things. And once we start to change the way we see things, we cannot behave in the same way that we used to, I couldn't, for example, I would be physically incapable of spraying poison on tomatoes and then selling it to the public. I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't be able to throw sewage in a clear spring water. I couldn't do that. So, because I'm aware of the sanctity of things and of the living system, and I would not be able to physically be able to do things that would go against life like that, if you see what I mean. Therefore, those who have the mindset that it's all right to do any of these things, once they start to interact with crop circles, soon change their mindset and soon change the way they do things. Because you only do things according to the way you think. And if your way of thinking changes, your way of behaving changes. And studying crop circles, as I said, will feed what you bring to it. So if you bring good intention, you try to understand, you want to learn the knowledge, it will give you all this. If you go there with other intentions that are not perhaps so clean or so pure, it will feed that also. So it's up to us. They give us the tools. Up to us what we do with the tools, really. It's always like that, isn't it?
Final question. What happens if we, as a white race, let's say, if we continue to ignore the crop circle?
And if we continue to ignore the crop circles, I think that we will, I see by that perhaps that you mean if we continue with the application of a mechanistic mindset. Well, it's not just the crop circles. I mean, it's on the newspaper every day, you know, where people who are not perhaps relating to crop circle who are already ringing the alarm bells. If we continue to cut all the forest, if we continue to fish every fish out of the sea, if you continue to take all the minerals out of the earth and to pollute all our rivers, well, there will be great chaos on the planet because it's a living system and it's like an organism that's being abused and is ill. And sooner or later the immune system will kick in and there will be some terrible consequences. Already there are. There's tsunamis everywhere, the planet is heating, the seas are starting to become very erratic, the climate is erratic. Therefore, I'm not saying that these things would not happen without our involvement, but even science is saying that it is in part because of the way we treat the planet, you know, what we send in the atmosphere and all the rest of it. So we will be forced by circumstances to change our way. If we change voluntarily, because our mindset has been changed, it will be easier on us because we will create systems that will help us to continue in harmony with our environment. We say our environment is nature, isn't it? It's our planet. If we maltreat our planet, we are cutting up, we are destroying our chances of survival. If we go with the planet, we are enhancing our chances of survival. That's the choice we have. The crop circle are simply giving us a knowledge to help us accomplish that. And we would be foolish to refuse the message since it's been given so gracefully. I think we have to take it and apply it. That's what I think.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good. If that.
I'm good. Does anyone have a...
I've got one actually.
Okay.
From what I hear, Francine, I mean, you say that you think people are very much interacting with the circles, and probably the circles backwards as far as they're evolving every year, and there's a continued following. But for those people who aren't drawn in by it, like your farmer friend you were saying there, why don't you think the phenomenon is doing, perhaps the parrot could have, for example, in Alton Barnes, it could suddenly send a formation down that could cover the 4 fields in Eastfield, something really massive that would make everybody turn around and say, wow.
Even if you had every field in the world covered with crop circles, people would still not see them, would still refuse them. It's not for lack of wonder. I mean, even if we had one crop circle, it would be wondrous. I'm reminded of a man who came from France, and he said to me, my job is I do tours to the old ancient sites, and I take people to the Sinai, to the mount there where Moses, you know, saw the burning bush. That's 5,000 years ago. And I said to him, well, that's fantastic. Here we have one burning bush every day. It's momentous what's happening. And it's not for lack of momentum that people are not interested. It's not for lack, it's because their vision precludes it. And they can't even see it. And we all know that even in this area, I would say 90% of people in this area have never seen a crop circle. They know it exists. They've never seen one. I see them everywhere. So even if you cover the whole county full of crop circles, 80% of people won't see them. Those who will see them are those who can see them already. So what we need to think now is not waiting for proofs. We're waiting for it is already incredibly startling, you know. What we have to wait for is the day when people begin to realize that the mechanistic mindset actually has no future. It has no future. And then we begin to look for other ways, and then things begin to, be visible. But as long as we're in the mechanistic mindset, it's blocking our vision. It's not just the crop circle that should wake us up. All the floods and the change of climate and all the scientists screaming their heads off. The lack of oil. Oil is about to run out. Everybody, we know that. Still, nobody changes their way. Events will make us change.
Good. It's a good note to end on.
Absolutely fantastic.
No.
Really.
Thank you.
Francine.